Knitting by Faith, Chapter 4. Bright and Shiny. Useful and ornamental needlework, knitting, and netting are capable of being made not only sources of personal gratification, but of high moral benefit and the means of developing and surpassing loveliness and grace, some of the highest and noblest feelings of the soul. Author unknown, from the Ladies' Work Table Book, 1845. The other day, I was driving through my town when something caught my attention. I turned to see an object that was flashing pictures and words. Our town had a new LED sign. So now you know that I'm from a small town and we don't have many of these signs. The point here is that the blinking, color-changing sign trumped my attention away from driving. As I safely drove on, I thought about how, as humans, we are attracted to bright, shiny, sparkly things. Lights and motion draw the attention of our eyes. For example, when you have a group of people over, they'll most likely look at each other and talk. Once someone turns the TV on, the focus is now drawn to the movements and pictures on the screen, even for those reluctant to watch. Knitters have a different way of expressing this phenomenon. I've seen many people in yarn shops and have observed how they are drawn to the colors, textures, and smells. Some are vocal in expressing their love of color, a yarn brand, or a ply. Then there are the silent types who lovingly fondle and pet the yarn. Those not used to knitters may find this behavior surprising, but to a fiber lover, the yarn on the shelves may not be moving, but nonetheless beckons in a subtle siren song. I'm sure that psychologists may have terminologies for the behavior of those knitters, which may or may not be complimentary. But the fact remains that as humans, we are attracted to the lovely things, that which catches our attention and lures us in like a tractor beam. When we are in this beam, things around us fall away. An example of this happened at a local yarn shop. A woman was so intent on looking at the hand-dyed yarn that she fell down a small flight of steps. She hadn't noticed that the steps were there between her and the yarn. In the end, she did get to see the yarn and no permanent damage was done. The incident with the new LED sign made me think a little bit more about my response to bright and shiny stimulus. I found a verse in the Bible that reminded me of the experience. Luke 17:24 says, "The Son of Man in his day will be like the lightning, which flashes and lights up the sky from one end to the other." Imagine Jesus appearing like lightning and with flashes of light. He would draw all of our attention at once, so we would forget everything around us and focus only on him. Knitting needles and yarn will fall from our fingers. I may not even care about drop stitches at that point, for he himself will be more attractive than the most exquisite skein of indie-dyed sock yarn, more fascinating than a lost Elizabeth Zimmerman pattern, and more joyful than finding oneself in a town full of yarn shops with everything half price or less. Until that day, I will continue to knit and drive through my town safely among bright and shiny signs. When I pet a soft skein of yarn, I'll try to think of how much more eye-catching Jesus' return will be. I doubt even Kiviat can hold a candle to that. Knitting by Faith, Chapter 5. The Knitting Hands. Knitting is very conducive to thought. It is nice to knit a while, put down the needles, write a while, then take up the sock again. Dorothy Day. When you first learned to knit, this repetitive movement was not yet automatic. Your hands had to learn the motions of knitting and build muscle memory. But eventually, with practice, your hands learned the movements of knitting, and you no longer had to think about how to knit. You just knit. When I knit, I focus on looking at the yarn, needles, the item I'm making, or even a book. I rarely stop anymore to take a close look at my hands and what they are doing. But when I do, I notice that they are short and a little thick, with nails that are somewhat ragged and unkempt, because I'd rather knit or write than paint them. These details are interspersed with small scars and lines that are earned from hard work and experience. Whether I like them or not, they are my tools for knitting and living. Hands are meant to touch and be touched, perform tasks, relay information, and so much more. Each pair of hands has touched those of many others, from the delicate curling fingers of a newborn to the firm strength of youth, and to the calloused and wrinkled from hard work and age. No matter the culture, hands speak a language. Knitting hands say that they are talented, industrious, and can care for others. Hands can wave a greeting, motion someone to come close, tell them to stop, comfort those in sorrow, and touch someone in love. Thinking about hands causes me to wonder what God's hands look like. Do his hands have nails, cuticles, wrinkles, veins, and scars? Are they soft and curling as a baby's? Firm and strong with youth? Calloused and wrinkled from hard work and age? Maybe none of these are true, or maybe all of these are. What would it be like to take my simple hands and place them in God's hands? I imagine that his hands would feel strong, curled around mine. They would also be large, like a father's hands holding his child's. His hands would be warm and strong, yet have scars and calluses earned from the work he has done. My hands would feel safe and comfortable within his. I can clasp my hands in his and walk by his side. There is a particular joy in just being in his presence and experiencing things together. I can give something from my hands to him. This could be a gift to show my love, or perhaps it may be a burden that I can no longer carry. He accepts both things from my hands. I can join in the work of his hands and serve by his side. Then the work I do is no longer my own, nor is the work he does only his own. Our hands together not only impact my life and those around me, but also my knitting. Whether I make a simple dishcloth or a scarf for warmth or a sweater for wearing, I am no longer just knitting. A dishcloth becomes a tool to make things clean. A scarf becomes a shield against the cold. A sweater becomes a garment of praise. More than knitting can be done when I reach out and join God in the work of our hands. Knitting by Faith, Chapter 6, Different Yarns. Really, all you need to become a good knitter are wool, needles, hands, and slightly below average intelligence. Of course, superior intelligence such as yours and mine is an advantage. Elizabeth Zimmerman from Knitting Without Tears. The most important part of a knitting project, in my opinion, is the yarn. If I start a pattern and it's not turning out how I'd like it to, I'm more likely to switch out the pattern than the yarn. Oftentimes I buy yarn with no specific project in mind, just because I think it'll make a great something someday. I know I'm not alone in this. Yarn varieties have changed over the years. When I first learned knitting, I could find acrylic blends, kitchen cotton, and itchy wool. This was before the internet, and let's just say, I learned to knit at a very young age. Now when I go to my LYS, local yarn store, I hardly ever glance in the direction of the acrylic, kitchen cotton, or itchy wools. I'm instantly met by varieties of soft wool, alpaca, mohair, silk, and even some yarn spun with feathers in it. Each yarn has its uses. Animal fiber has warmth, durability, and sustainability. Cotton, hemp, bamboo, and other plant fibers have good water absorption, durability, and for some, a natural yet dander-free alternative to animal fibers. Silk makes a lovely showing, from a crunchy, tough yarn to a soft as butter feel. There are also yarns made from rayon, seashell, corn, bananas, sea kelp, milk, sugarcane, tofu. You get the picture. And beyond that, knitters find different things to knit with, such as the tapes out of old cassettes, wire, licorice, rope, Christmas garland, fabric cut into strips, dental floss. Whatever looks like yarn is fair game. And even some things that don't look like yarn can become something in a knitter's capable hands. I took a quiz a little while ago called What Kind of Yarn Are You? And it got me thinking about people in yarn. There's a section of the Bible that talks on a similar subject on the body of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 20 states, "As it is, there are many parts, but one body." Perhaps in the knitter's world, we are all different squares, but one Afghan. And somehow it doesn't matter that the superwash and the felting wool got into the same blanket. Think about the many varieties of yarn there are and the many more personalities of people. Each would make a unique square in the Afghan of life. What kind of yarn would your square be made of? Acrylic. Widely available, easily washable, durable, economical. Alpaca. Natural, soft, very warm, slightly fuzzy. Cashmere. Natural, sophisticated. Delicate, special care needed. Dishcloth cotton. Absorbent, natural, hardworking, washable and strong. Mercerized cotton. Natural, neat, playful and soft. Mohair. Fuzzy, warm, sticks to others, doesn't come apart easily. Novelty. Playful, fun, often wrapped around someone's neck. Silk. Surprisingly strong, natural, and shiny. Wool. Natural, durable, water absorbent, warm. It also has memory. We can all identify with at least one type of yarn, even if it may not be our favorite to work with. I'd like to be cashmere, but I'm probably more like mercerized cotton. I don't like to knit with cotton all that much, but it's not very stretchy, doesn't have a good memory, and is heavier than wool. Nevertheless, mercerized cotton is an important yarn. It's wonderful in chemo caps for sensitive heads, an alternative to wool for those with allergies. It has a shiny finish and takes to dyes nicely. It is an important yarn in the overall scheme of things, even if it's not as sophisticated as cashmere. We all are different yarns with our different functions. None are unworthy to be worked with, and each has a part in meeting someone's needs. Celebrate your positive aspects and what you can give to others. You have an important role to play, and the Afghan of life would be missing a square without you.